Welcome to Taboo. I'm your host, Dr. Keisha Powell. On this podcast, we will have courageous conversations based on how people use their pain and turned it into passion along with their walk with God. Good morning, listeners. Welcome again to another episode of Taboo. Today we have um, a very, very special guest. Her name is Dr. Christine Lee McLean. I've known Christine, oh my goodness, for so many years. Not only is she a mentor to me, she's my sister, she's my friend, she's a blessing, she's a beacon of hope for so many people. She's an inspiration, she's a trailblazer. Did I say she's a leader? She is a leader, she's an entrepreneur, she's a woman of God, and she does it with such grace. And today I have the privilege of having her on Taboo, but I will not say more. I let her introduce herself. So without further ado, welcome Dr. McLean to Taboo. Can you tell the
You.
audience about yourself, and please leave no stone unturned?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Powell. I love calling you that name because I have been there and I've watched your journey. I've seen everything. But
Thank
yes, it's just an honor, absolute honor to be here with you this morning. You're also an inspiration to me. So it's just like coming full circle right now.
you.
uh, Thank you. So, as Dr. Paul said, my name is Dr. Christine Lee McLean. I'm an educator. I work with special populations, and my biggest inspiration, of course, is just the opportunity I get to be mom to a beautiful 11-year-old girl who is on the spectrum. And I'll talk more about this, but definitely her just getting me started on this journey and where it has taken me. I am also mom to a 16-year-old boy who loves soccer. I have my master's degree in mental health counseling. My PhD is in conflict analysis and resolution. And I've been married for 17 years to a wonderful guy who loves to farm. And actually, I think I turned his passion to farming into our own little business where we love to introduce our Jamaican spices to people who all over the world. So it's definitely like a lot of things that I do, but I do them from my passions. So it's the things that I enjoy, the people I enjoy and love, and I just take it from there into what I'm doing every day. So yes, that's me. I educate, I advocate, I just love helping and sharing and serving people.
Did I not tell you she was awesome? And that's just a nutshell, everyone. That's just a nutshell.
Oh, there's more.
Christine, a lot more, a lot more. Let me tell you, Christine is one who never turns down anyone who needs help. And she, again, I've said it before and I'm saying it again, she does it with such grace and humility. She never asks for anything of herself. And I've often wondered, how does she do it? Being a mom, being a wife, being able to do so many things with people not only diagnosed with disabilities, but people who are in need. And yet she always does it with a smile. I don't think I've ever not seen her beautiful smile and her cute dimples. It makes you look at yourself. And especially when you think about the work of God, how to not just practice stewardship, but to always give him the glory. And Dr. Christine Lee McLean is the epitome of what that is about. And I'm hoping that anyone out there who's listening today, please connect with her. She's on Facebook. She has I don't know if you still have your podcast.
No, I just do little blurbs here and there on Facebook, but I do have my Instagram, which is Dr. McLean. And I also have my food Instagram because I forgot to mention that I'm like an amateur chef. I love cooking. I like
Amateur is not. No, no, you are a great chef. I love the food.
Right. I grew up in the industry, you know, baking and catering and cooking. So I love to fuse my background, which is as Dr. Powell and I, we're Jamaicans. We met in Jamaica decades ago. I'm not aging us, but
No.
we so I have that background. But yes, it comes naturally to me to just love people
Mm.
and love seeing them be the best that they can be.
Thank you so much for what you do for so many, including myself. Thank you.
Yeah.
So how did your journey begin? When did you turn your pain into passion?
I'm gonna go back to the pain because every time I talk about this, I end up crying, and I hope I don't this morning. But I I had my second child, um, this beautiful girl I talk about, 11-year-old, and there were certain things you notice when a child is a baby, you notice they're supposed to hit certain milestones. And my little girl, she was just not hitting a lot of those milestones, especially with communication, with talking. And I had her starting with, for example, speech therapy. And the speech therapist was like, it's more than just a speech issue. Because there were other things happening. There were behavioral issues. There were just some connections that were not being made um, with her. So I had her evaluated. And believe me when I say the first time I heard the word autism was that day. And this is after I'd already completed a master's degree in mental health counseling. And I remember going back into the DSM and searching to see if I could find what this thing is. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I skipped that whole chapter because it's there, but I guess I just wasn't interested in learning. And I read everything I could read about it. You know me, I love learning. So I read, I researched, but first I cried.
Mm.
Like I call it a period of mourning that you go through when you're a parent and hear for the first time that your child has this diagnosis. So I cried. I I felt like all the hopes and dreams that I had for my daughter, because at this time my son was 4, so you could see him progressing in a certain way. And you kind of knew, oh, I would love this to happen for him in a few years. All those hopes and dreams that you have for this child, they're dead.
Mm.
Yes, it's a death of hopes and dreams. It's a death of what you wanted. So for me, it was a period of mourning. And let me tell you, you go through those stages. First, it's denial. Oh, this is not happening. No, she doesn't have this. Let's get a second opinion. And then it turns into anger, like what on earth did I do to cause this? And there are lots of people who have opinions about what people do during pregnancy or what people do
Mhm.
after that causes autism. So for me, it's not to be driven by hearsays or opinions, but driven by the scientific research that's out there. So
Mhm.
for me, it was to study more. So I studied and I realized that it's not death. It's just a new way of looking at things. I am going to have to make some adjustments about how I see her and how I'm going to help her to progress. So, for someone who is coming, for example, from a mental health background where I'm very solution focused and it's all about finding answers, I had to change that pattern now and it had to be like modifications. So, how am I going to make sure that she improves to a lesson where, to a level where her quality of life becomes the best that it can be. So I I started getting her therapy. Speech was a big issue, so we started with speech. And then, as I said, I could notice there were other things happening, like the tantrums. So we looked into behavior therapy, and we took it one step at a time, one day at a time. And then at the same time, my son's life was going, and middle school was coming the following year. And I said, you know what? I need to find a way to get into this horrific middle school experience that I hear parents keep talking about. I need to find a way to check it out for myself. So I decided to substitute at the middle school he was going to be going to the following year. And the very first placement I had as a substitute teacher was in the ESE classroom.
Oh my goodness.
And I walked in, and I guess when I signed up, I had no idea either what SVE meant. But in middle school, and high school, it's a specialized classroom for students who have a disability. So I walked in and I saw I think that classroom had maybe 10 or 11 students, and they were all different. Physical differences, um, different challenges. And I was like, oh my goodness. And at this time, my daughter was 7. So she has had her diagnosis now I'm sorry, she was 5. So she has had her diagnosis now for 2 years, and it's still very new to me.
Mm.
So I remember seeing one little boy who was in a diaper, and he was 13, and my daughter was not yet potty trained. And I went to him and I said to my husband, I don't think I want her to go to middle school not being potty trained. And I spent that excruciating summer helping her to get to that place where she was out of diapers. Because
Mm.
I say out of diapers because she's 11 now and she still has an accident here and there.
Mm.
So as I say, it's a process, but that was where I walked into the classroom. I remember requesting to sub that classroom again. And then the teacher taking my number and just calling me and saying, can you come in? And
Wow.
I did that. And then the principal, I guess, saw something in me and said, could you teach this class? And I was like, I don't know if I can take this. It's going to be 24/7 because I'm going to teach this and then I'm going to go home and live this. And I was very skeptical at first, but there was a need. And I feel I came from a good background being a parent. So I went in, had no specific educational qualifications to do it, but could start the process of certification. And I started and I did it. I've been doing it now for 5 years as a
Wow.
special, as an ESE teacher. So it's like the more you do it, the more you meet the students, the more you meet their community of parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, the more you feel, wow, I'm
Mm.
the one learning. I'm the one who is learning and being fulfilled every single day from these experiences. So for me, it was a no-brainer because I loved it. I love working with these kids. And I remember one teacher who knew of my daughter saying, aren't you afraid of burnout? And I'm like, you know, if I feel I'm getting close to that, I'll take a day off or I'll do something, or I'll just go to Jamaica and spend a weekend or something. But it's how to pace yourself where it just doesn't get to that point where you feel I don't like this anymore, or you're dreading waking up in the morning and coming into work. Um, so for me, that pain, that period of mourning, that crying became the passion for me. It became my job. It became wanting to see these kids not become regular or normal, but
Mm,
become the best that they could become where they are.
mm,
So, for example, just this week, having one of my students just stand in line for the first time after being in school for 5 weeks. He's able to just stand in line and walk with us instead of running all
wow.
around. And for me, it was like a moment just to celebrate that child. So these are the small things that happen every day, and I look at them and I say, that's what keeps me going. That's what helps me to realize that I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. I think about how the whole thing happened, that
Mhm,
um, God placed me in that situation, in that classroom, that
mm,
specific day. It's even the way it happened with my certification. I often wondered, how would I get through, like, paying for this course or that course or doing this, and COVID hit and they were opening up, the exams became free for teachers, and the whole process, just everything just worked
wow.
out. And I looked at it and I said, thank you, God. If this is where you want me, this is where I'm going to put my talents,
Mm,
because you you know best. You know us better than we know ourselves.
mhm, mhm,
So that was how my journey began. It was just a painful, very and every now and again it happens where she has a tantrum or something. I call you sometimes and I'm like, why is this happening? I thought she had gotten over this and here it's bad. Those things happen
yeah.
and it's life, and you just have to move on and fix it as best as you can. You fix it and you just have to move on.
I'm listening to your journey and I'm trying not to tear up because I can get emotional. Ah, geez. Y- Your journey sounds like it was not only the pain to passion, but a healing process. And
Definitely.
as you said, God must have known why He put you there, because what the listeners don't see is I see when you post, the things you're doing with these young people and how much people have often given up on them.
Mm,
And sometimes even the parents are struggling to keep up. But just hearing your journey, I hope someone out there will understand that you're not alone. And because that's the whole point of Taboo. When I started in autism, oh Lord, many moons ago,
mhm,
I never forgot when I started, there wasn't anything. You couldn't even find literature
mhm,
on autism. And back then we had to struggle to create materials. And I remembered attending parent meetings with a few parents, and one parent in particular who, I used to just admire how she did things. She actually created an organization
mhm,
in Connecticut for all parents who had children diagnosed with ASD. Now, being on the other side of the fence, where I work mostly with teenagers and adults, and I see the struggles, especially for those who graduate from college who still cannot get a job, because once they're going in for an interview and there's something that an employer picks up, they don't get the job. And I think that is unfair. And I think things need to change
mhm,
where that's
mhm,
concerned.
mhm,
But when I look at your beautiful daughter and I see her swimming and cooking and independent and at school and brilliant, it gives me that hope to keep pushing.
mhm.
So I thank you for what you're doing. I probably will say thank you throughout the entire show, because sometimes we sit back and even me, I'll question, I'll say, God, I'm not quite sure where you're leading me next or what you want to do. But that was the hope of this podcast, to be able to share out to the world and to introduce the world to people like Dr. Christine Lee McLean, because we need more of you. So thank you for all that you're doing. And I am trying again not to tear up here.
I
Um
know.
would you change anything if you could?
I think I think maybe I would have, had I known, again, education is power, right? But if
Mm,
I had known about this, I probably would have changed my course of study into in this direction rather than the direction I took. I always knew I wanted to help people. I started out as an educator 30 years, almost 30 years ago. So I
mm,
always knew this is something I wanted to do. I just, I think when I did, for example, my postgrad studies, I was searching
mm.
because my master's degree and my PhD, for example, they're still in the social sciences, but they're two different areas. So I think I was searching for that thing I wanted to do to be able to put my talents and help people, but I didn't know. So I actually was working on my PhD when I received my daughter's diagnosis. So
Wow.
I think I was 2 or 3 years in. So I started like shifting, and it even took me longer to finish my PhD studies because I was so distracted by just learning everything and being a mom and all of that kind of stuff. So I think if I knew, because now that I know more, I would have, that's the direction I would have taken. And that's the only thing I can think of when I think of if I could change something. That's definitely what I would change, just that I would have started this course of research and study before rather than later.
You know, it's funny you should say that because the other day I was saying to someone, I wish I'd known. See, because back then, coming from a Caribbean island, we were taught that if you do well in school, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, you know, but we never really learned a lot about clinical psychology or
Mm,
delving into special education.
right.
You know, that's still limited. I'm not sure what it's like now because I've left Jamaica so many years, but that's something I hope will change because even here,
Mm,
I remembered, was it last year? Last year, there were less than 10,000 teachers graduating
mm,
with a special education degree.
mm-hmm.
And I was appalled.
Yeah.
People don't want to because they see things differently. Even when I was doing, I remember 20 of us started the autism program and only 10 of us graduated from the program.
Wow.
A lot of people dropped out because
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm not doing this. But I keep saying to everyone that autism is a gift. It's a diagnosis. It's like saying, okay, I have diabetes or something, but you get over it.
Right.
Find that people diagnosed with neurodiverse disorders are the most gifted and talented and brave individuals I've ever met.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You
you
know,
know what I call it? Their superpower. I say they all have a
their power.
superpower.
It is their superpower. And
Mm-hmm.
I've often said it to people. I think we tend to be afraid of what we don't know. And as you
Mm-hmm.
rightly said, you know, education, knowledge is power. If you
Yes,
educate yourself,
definitely.
you'll see a lot of things differently. And people shouldn't be afraid of the unknown. And this is something I hope I'll be able to spread globally because that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the work I want to do for God, to be able to go to different countries
Mm-hmm.
and educate people about autism and show that it is not what they think it is.
Right. Just even the definition of the neurodivergent, who are people whose brain differences affect how their brain works. Their
Mhm.
brain is still working. It's just working different from normal people. But I find that you know me with the superpower thing, that they have such exceptional ways of doing some of the things that we regular people find complex. Like
Mhm.
just the way they process things sometimes. I look at my daughter, for example, and her superpower is just being able to memorize things. And she has like a spelling thing going where she just has to see a word once and she gets it and she will spell it accurately. And other things like, as you said fearless. That's another key word. Fearless, you know, doing things that as an 11-year-old, I couldn't even think of doing some of the things I see her doing, or even just advancing in certain things the way she's doing it. So
Mhm.
definitely teaching people that, yeah, they're different, but they're amazing different, you know.
Amazingly
Yeah,
different,
yeah.
amazingly different. And I hope employers can also see that hiring persons diagnosed with autism would be an asset to their organization.
Right.
I think we are living in a world where we can make accommodations for anyone and that people should be open to it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still a learning progress. I hope they'll bring that
Yeah.
up in the elections too. So, what is next for you?
Well, definitely continuing in education, but continuing in uh, going beyond the classroom now and making it wider. You mentioned where we're from, Jamaica, for example. I think, yes, there's a lot of work being done on autism with autistic individuals or people who are on the spectrum, but I still think a lot of that is mostly in the urban areas or cities.
Mm,
So my focus definitely would be more rural focus. My mom doesn't like me telling this story, but I remember once she came to visit and my daughter had a tantrum, and the tantrums they can be very intense.
mm,
I heard my mom in the room. What she was saying was kind of incomprehensible. I couldn't understand what she was saying. And she had like a bottle with holy holy water anointing her. And I said, Mom, what's going on? And she said, it's demons, Chris. I'm trying to get out the demons. And I'm like, why? What's going on? And I remember she was here with me in Florida, and there was an organization down the road, half an hour away, that they had grandparent classes, but they work with this population, and they had grandparent classes for grandparents of children who are on the spectrum. And I
mhm,
say, I'm enrolling you, Mom, into a new class. We're going to learn something new. And she took the class and she came back she went back to Jamaica a couple of weeks later. I visited her and she said, I'm so happy that I went to that grandparent class because there was a mom in church this morning whose daughter was acting up, and I was able to talk to her and help her to understand that maybe it's not that she's being bad or she's being rude, or there might be something else, so she should talk to the doctor. And I'm like, whoa,
wow,
Mom, that's amazing. So it's that mindset change that I want. I don't want it to be a stigma. I don't want it to look as if these people are almost like lepers in society.
mm,
No, they are functional and very bright, smart people who can, as you say, they can contribute so much
so much.
in the workplace, in the society. Once you hone in on what they can do, what their ability is, rather than focus on disability, then there is so much that they can do and achieve in tremendous ways compared to what normal people can do. So I think definitely education, just getting the word out there that this is hard. Totally got that. I live that, but it's not demons. It's not obia. It's not voodoo. It's not um, um, being a dum dum, because I've heard that term.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that's going on in the brain. Some people have problems with their liver. Some people have problems with their kidneys. Some people have problems. I'm asthmatic, so my lungs have their issues. It's just something in their brain that they are dealing with. So if you can just help them, make your modifications, make your accommodations to bring out the best in them. So I think definitely continue in education and just getting the word out there and breaking up that stigma.
I love it. Maybe that might be your new book, Breaking the Stigma.
Definitely.
That's a new title, Breaking the
I'm writing that down right now. And
because
I'll
it's
let you write the forward.
yeah, very profound. And I love when you said it is people need to stop looking at the disability and look at the ability.
Mhm.
That's exactly what it's about. So, what advice can you give our listeners to empower them in turning their pain into passion?
I think just go with the flow. Um, don't fight it if you're being led in a certain direction. Don't
Mm,
give up every time there's an obstacle or hurdle in the way. I think God sends us messages, and sometimes the messages are very personal.
mm,
There are some people who are very stubborn, and I can be. So for me, the message was like, this is where I want you, but I'm going to give you a child so you can experience this firsthand. So I I um I think we have to just go with the flow, don't fight it, take it
mm,
one day at a time. You may just have, you know, you may push things away and you may say, I don't want to do that, I want to do that, but it just keeps popping up, it just keeps presenting itself. So for me, it was like I have this child, so I need to learn now about what's going on with her. And then my first day as a sub, I end up in this classroom. And then just as I'm about to like move on to something else, the principal calls and said, well, could you teach this class? And I'm, well, okay, message after message after message. So definitely um, just go with it, do what you have to do, and just don't give up on yourself and what you have to get to the point where you see that message, that writing on the wall, and you just keep going at it. So I think that's what I would love to tell people about turning that pain. And I think we learn so much from our pain that we can't learn from reading a book
mhm,
because this is our lived experience. This is what we're going through every single day. This is what we have to not use our pain to get us down and become victims. We have to let that pain make us survivors, make the pain empower us to move on to become bigger and better. So
mm,
that's how I looked at it. For me, you said it was a healing process. It took me many, many, many years after that first time hearing that diagnosis to recover and to say, you know what, I am not going to be ashamed because, yeah, there was a time I was ashamed to even take her out in public.
mm,
And I remember one morning, she was pretty young, maybe 4. And I had no choice but to take her to the local supermarket.
mm.
That child was reading every label. She was reading. She couldn't talk. She couldn't express herself, but she could read. And she
Wow.
was reading every label, and the people in the supermarket were looking at her like she was the smartest kid on earth. And I'm like, that's my kid. and after a while, that shame becomes I this I can't be ashamed of this child. I can't be ashamed or afraid of her because I used to be afraid to that she's going to tantrum at the worst time. So just when I need to go somewhere or do something, she's going to. And it really shifted me into, I believe energy is transferred. So if
Mhm.
I am afraid, if I'm ashamed, that transfer to her. So if I'm very happy and I'm upbeat about things, she can pick it up because they're also very super sensitive people.
Very.
they pick up on good energy and bad energy easily. So I said to myself, then I have to change also a lot of my thinking and my mindset and my attitude in order to make her a better person.
Mm.
So definitely it's just moving on and just being better as a result of our circumstances. So pain into passion, and I love that title and that caption. For me is just about learning and also making myself better for her.
Mhm. Dr. McLean, thank you so much for again empowering us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've heard many journeys with this podcast. To be honest, I didn't even think I'm not sure what it would have been, but I can tell you whenever I finish interviewing someone, what I leave with is really so enlightening, but most of all, empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for doing that this morning. I can imagine that there's someone out there who is going to hear this and think, I can do this too. And that's my hope, that people will learn how to turn their pain into passion. So, again, thank you so much for being here with us. And for listeners out there, you're not alone. You are loved. God is with you. Don't give up. Be patient.
Mm. Yeah,
About being patient too. And never lose sight of there's always people will say, oh, but it's so cliche to say there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You
there
can
is.
turn your pain into passion. See this season in your life as a journey for change, but also hope and believe and be strong in your faith and your conviction that things will get better so that you can also turn to someone else and say, you know what, I went through this and it's going to be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
until next time, I'm your host, Dr. Keisha Paula. Thank you again for tuning in and see you next time. Thanks again for joining us on Taboo. Tune in next week for another invigorating episode when we speak with another expert, turn their pain into passion. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Keisha Powell. Contact us at www.powelltherapysolutions.com or join us on Facebook at Taboo From Pain to Passion. Remember, you're loved.
This is a production of Artist Haven Media.